Hello, Adam. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Leighton. How about yourself?
Oh, no complaints, brother. No complaints. Another day in paradise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Same out here. At least it's not blowing sideways, but it is blowing outside where I'm at.
Well, first of all, before we get into that, because I can't wait to dive,
Yeah.
please introduce yourself. Tell the audience how you got here, what you're about, and give us your backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm Adam with Water Rock Farming. My whole adventure in, learning what permaculture, regenerative agriculture is, basically started off working with sustainable energy locally out here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm actually about an hour and a half or so outside from there in a place called Pahrump, Nevada, in Southern Nevada here. And it basically started from me just having a passion to try to make a change and a difference. I've always been very philosophical in the sense, or spiritual too. I was raised, Christian and everything too and stuff. So there's always that kind of like ties with like, the Almighty, I guess you could say, that kind of started to change the definition with all that. But there's always something that just made me to where I wanted to help out with the world, and also just seeing constantly every day things on the news about how everything's all messed up and all that stuff. I knew I wanted to do something to be able to help make a difference for me. And the big change also happened after I had my kids and stuff too, and realized, I'm bringing them into this world. So got to find some sort of positivity about that. Originally, so yeah, I was working with a solar company that was out here that actually was owned by Elon Musk's cousins. It's called Solar City, and I worked for them a couple years. And it was a corporation, but it had really good key factor values in it that I really liked, when they were just really supporting the Go Green movement and being able to help to make a difference, telling us that every solar panel that we sell, we're taking that person off of, bad energy and like, from like dependence on coal and all that stuff onto something that's good, renewable energy that's actually coming straight from the sun, just like the way a plant works, using with this photosynthesis. Now we have solar panels that are developing electricity off of that. So that triggered my vision to kind of open up to understand that there is a way out there to be able to help and improve things. And so that's when my really big passion started to go through. I started to see how, like, there was these bad ties that were in these energy companies of using these like things like coal and all that stuff. And I kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit in there. And then I also found about how bad things were with agriculture and the food that we're eating and all that stuff too. And realized that, there's like millions of acres of agriculture that's going on that's been ran by big farm companies like Monsanto, and like poisoning of the soil on a 1 million acre scale like that is just insane. So that started to trigger a little bit of passion inside of me to where I'm like, well, what could I really do? And I found out a little bit of a town when I was living in Vegas there, found out a town that's like right outside here, which is where I'm at right now in Pahrump, Nevada, and where you could actually have your own well and have a decent little plot of land out here and actually be able to maybe do a little something. So that made me start going into thinking about agriculture and what I could do in my backyard. And so after working with that solar company, I was able to make enough money to be able to buy my first house, buy my plot of land, and start growing something. At first, I didn't know what it was I wanted to grow. I had no idea, but something in the back of my head, just kind of praying and meditating on it, told me a little bit about like, you should grow hemp. And during this time now, I had no idea at all about the difference between hemp and marijuana. And believe me, there is a difference, And I started to kind of like excuse it. I was like, no, I don't want to do anything illegal. I don't want to get caught up. I just had my 2 kids here, and like, I want to make sure I build a good solid foundation for them. I'm not trying to risk anything, do anything illegal and stuff. And then I just kind of kept hearing, grow hemp, check it out and stuff. And I was like, all right. So started to kind of get on Google, checked out a few things, and found out that, yeah, there's a big difference between hemp and marijuana. Came across this beautiful book by Jack Herrera called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And that took the blind off my eyes, like, immediately. And it showed the difference. And it showed also how this plant, the hemp, could actually help save the world. And the whole philosophy in that book motivated the passion inside of me that I have to be able to start doing this and growing stuff and getting on board with this whole regenerative ag system and everything, and permaculture in general. It just revoked that spirit I found in that guiding spirit and stuff. That's what I call it, as a spirit, at least. And yeah, it really opened my eyes to all of like the lies that we've been told about the plant, the cannabis plant in general, and beyond even, like I said, with the poisoning of the foods and stuff, with all this glyphosate and then putting in all the fields and everything. So that's where my huge vision started to come through. I went down that rabbit hole again. That was about back in 2016 when I got my first plot of land and started looking into all this. And I got a part of the hemp association and I learned how that there was a license that you could get so you could grow hemp. And so I started to go down that course. And I even went into the whole factor of learning the difference of the difference between hemp and cannabis. And then I started to understand that, the concept of what CBD does and the difference between THC. And yeah, it just opened up a whole brick of, I guess, a can of worms, you could say, about just like the abilities of this plant. But reading that book really, really was what started everything on me. Even with the whole spokes of everything that hemp can do, from the fibers that it makes and the food sourcing from its seed, obviously the medicinal properties, but just beyond that, it was just like it literally triggered everything that I am inside of being able to make that difference in my small community and also beyond. That right there made it to where I was like, all right, I know this is what I want to do with my life. And that's started to make me guide into and start getting more deeper into this. So ended up, cut scene, I guess, cut two. Now I found you guys out and stuff by, going down that rabbit hole and finding people that were also the same in mind, same set of mind and everything too. And it really hit me when I saw my buddy Quatamak and stuff on this, and he was on the show, and I'm like, oh no way, Quatamak! So I just got really excited and just decided at the end, the guys put your email there, and I was like, well, let me just throw it out and send an email out and see what bounces back. Just throw that pebble out and see what kind of ripple kind of effect comes over this way and stuff. So I did, and next minute, Ken hit me back. And I was like, all right, cool. It's like, want to do a show on Monday? I'm like, absolutely. You know what? Yeah, let's get it. Let's go. So it's been pretty much nonstop ever since that,
Beautiful story, dude. I love the awakening stories.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is because it creates so much inspiration for others. There's other people out there that have been awakened to the understanding of what's been going on for the last, probably about 100 years or so of all the manipulation and, whether it's the pharmaceutical, medical, food, energy, they're all very, very corrupt. And so, people want to escape from that, but it's like, how do you do it? So someone like yourself who, had this awakening and drive to go out and make a difference is all where it starts, right? It's very simple. So I did notice that you are, in a desert. So how are you managing the crops in the summer?
Yeah, great question. It's like a lot of the times when you look in the back of a seed packet, before you plant a tomato, it says full sun, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. But it doesn't mean full desert sun. You put that tomato out there in the full desert, and then all of a sudden that thing is just roasting, and you're not getting any fruit whatsoever, and you're wondering why, And you look up and you go over to your extension agency, you go over to all this information that you can find, and there's very minimal information. Unless you know somebody who's actually growing out here, you don't really get much information. And it's just not out there that much. So after a lot of trial and error, is really how you start growing. Agriculture out here is definitely, you're going to get discouraged, not to say the least, but you got to pick yourself up and keep going with it. And just that drive that I have of just trying to make success happen is really what made me be able to have that. But the biggest key factors is making sure that you have, sunshade of some sort, keeping it, your plants secured away from the elements as much as possible if they can't handle the heat. But something like hemp can actually handle the heat. And that's what just impresses me about this plant, because I can grow it in these conditions and outdoors. So it's, as long as I keep those roots moist and cool, then the outside of that plant, it's, sweat and terpenes and cannabinoids.
Guys, yes.
Yeah.
It's hemp and cannabis, for that matter, are very important plants in the kingdom. And unfortunately, they too were taken away from us. I don't know if you understand the story, but we, with our endocannabinoid system, it's important that we consume a version of it at throughout the course of our life. And then back in the 20s, DuPont stole it from us. And, prior to that, it was the main food for the animals that we ate, as well as part of the medicine. And you're right, the fiber is amazing for building. The ability for that plant to mine nutrient is insane. It's just it's a monster. And again, you can feed it and push it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. You just let it go. It's a weed. It's named a weed for a reason. So did you select a cultivar for your environment, or did you just trial and error through it?
Yeah. So I started work for some people that are out here, after going to a association, working through them, the individual ended up hooking me up with other people that were growing. And so I pretty much took like a 4-year kind of period of my life where I was learning all about how to cultivate the plant and also to process the plant, before I even started to do my own thing and stuff. Well, I was still doing my own thing on the side, but before I started to learn how to do it the correct way and all that too. I just took what they were doing and then made it and put my own kind of mix to the cake batter, to say. But the main strain kind of thing that was going on is basically it grows just like the way marijuana does. It just has that less than 0.3% THC, therefore making it to where it's considered as hemp now instead of that. So you're going after the cannabinoids. So the type of strain we have, it's been I've been growing it since about 2018 and kind of seed trained the hemp seed to be able to do really good in this climate. It was very diverse. We had small plants to huge plants to purple plants to green plants, and to all the in between different colors that they make. We had it all through this one type of seed strain that we were working off. So it's still pretty diverse in that way. I like to keep it that way, but what I'll do is make sure that if I do get like a male plant that comes and pops up and it gets seeded, then I look for the best plant that did well that year, and then I'll take those seeds and then use them for the next year. So then ideally the strain kind of balances out, and I've been doing that since 2018, and now we have a pretty good decent strain that's doing well right under the desert sun here. And it's been just rocking it. It's taking on the heat, taking on the wind, taking on all sorts of elements and stuff. And it's been getting some really good readings and stuff too. And so now we usually, instead of doing flower, we do a extraction method where we take that out and take it and concentrate it into what we call like a full extract cannabis oil, which is like basically like a refined RSO. And then we infuse that into hemp seed oil. So we're staying 100% hemp. And then it's just that simple. Those two concepts, just using that full extra cannabis oil and then that hemp seed oil and putting those two together in infusion. And that gives you like everything the plant has to offer instead of just focusing only on the CBD, because I believe this plant works synergistically with all the numerous amount of cannabinoids and terpenes that are in there. Why just go after one thing? We're going to start learning in the future that it's about everything that plant has to offer and getting as much of that as you can. As you said, the endocannabinoid system, how important that is inside of your body. You got to make sure that you're getting everything, and everyone's is different and unique to everyone, and that thing works off of, your brain functions, your bone functions, your gut, your health, your nervous system, all those type of things. So it's important to be able to get as much as you can from this plant. So I refuse to kind of go even more into breaking it apart and diverting it into the ways that science has been doing. If you even look at it with like vitamin C pills and stuff, it's better to get that source from the orange itself, and at least the orange juice, freshly squeezed, than it is to actually have it from when it's factored up into just only going after that vitamin C. So your body can actually use and make use of it.
Now, well, I'm going to back it up for a minute before we dive into your product. But yeah, you did exactly the right thing, and that is you train a strain or a cultivar to deal with your environment, and basically did what's called a sift, where you selected the best or healthiest plant and then used those seeds that year, and then wait again next year you used a different until eventually you got a cultivar that was superior to your environment. So did someone teach you how to do that, or was that just intuition?
It was mostly intuition, believe it or not. I just figured it just made sense to me. I'm like, well, if this plant's doing well and the grab it sees, then most likely most of those plants are going to be doing well. And it's not 100%. I mean, the diversity in the plant is insane. Like it will it was still, you have those small ones and you have those other ones that aren't doing well and stuff. And it's so like unstable, but in that way is what makes every single plant unique. And that's why I just decided, instead of just going for flower, since it's like so unstable like that, we could just combine them all together and then make that, extract out of it that way. And it just worked well for what my ultimate goal was, which is making that, medicine, that tincture, and like the rubs and all that stuff too. So it just worked well for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, common sense is not common anymore. So I'm glad to hear that you still have some. It will do you well. It'll do you justice, my friend.
Thank you.
So once you've extracted the cannabinoids, and then what do you crush the seeds and strain it?
No, I actually have to. I get a source from the from a hemp seed oil, since I guess not allowed to do make the oil here or something like that. I'm not sure, but I don't use the seeds, and also the amount of seeds like that we get is not going to be able to make enough to be able to make the tinctures. So we have to outsource that, the hemp seeds itself. But then when we do that, then we'll get it be able to get it infused with our full extra cannabis oil and stuff. So.
And what are you doing with your end product? Are you putting it into foods, or are you selling tinctures, or?
Yeah, doing tinctures. We do tinctures and like rubs and topicals and things like that. Yeah.
Nice. And how is business?
It's all right now. It's all right. It's been going on since like 2019 and stuff. And we have like really one large wholesale account that's been really decently taking care of the bills. I'm not a rich man, like I'm not making a whole bunch of this or anything, but it's been taking care of the bills, and that's what really matters the most, is it's helping me to be able to afford my expensive habit of farming, which I love to do in general. So, it goes beyond where it makes it to where I can actually start growing produce and making things happen for my local community and be able to feed people good food, and also offer them a good, superior CBD product and stuff. So.
Yeah, that is so true. Any farmer I speak to says it's a bad habit, not a job.
It's expensive habit.
And let's face it, it's risky as hell.
Yes.
You could put your whole season, and if you have a crop loss or failure, you're in trouble financially. And so it has probably got to be one of the most risky careers or choices that a person can make. But again, hearing stories like yours are encouraging people to take the chance, right? Because at the end of the day, to be able to produce your own clean food and your own clean medicine is a dream for most people. So again, you're encouraging them, saying, hey, look, if I could do it, you can do it. Type of mentality, it gives them the opportunity to say, okay, you know what, I can do this too. So congratulations. Have you ever heard of a gentleman named Dr. Ethan Russo?
Russo, it sounds familiar. No, actually the only Russo I know is actually from like Cobra Kai in the show. So no, I don't think I heard of him.
He's a gentleman that started in the pharmaceutical world, and they tried to essentially create a synthetic form of THC that they could regulate. And so after years and many, many millions of dollars, the company that he worked for basically decided to abandon the project, because no matter what they do, they could not get the compound to respond the way it does when it naturally comes from a plant. Go figure. It's just like all the vitamins, right? All those vitamins, the reason why you have to take such a high milligram dose is because only like 1% of the electrons are in the right rotation for your body to be able to metabolize it. And so in his work, he could never get the compound to metabolize. So he left that industry and he got involved with the cannabis community and reached out specifically to a good friend of mine, Shango Los, about what was going on in the community. Now, Shango puts on a podcast called Shaping Fire, and I personally think he's probably one of the most talented podcasters that I've ever met. He basically inspired me in many ways to do this. The way he handles the questioning, the direction. He gets the best of you out of you, right? He manages you in a way that you are expressing things that would be very difficult for you to do if he didn't do his job. So he's another one that I really would love for more people to find out about, because again, he's masterful, and he's been doing this for quite some time in and for the cannabis community.
It's Ethan Russo, right?
Yeah, Dr. Ethan Russo.
Okay.
Anyway, so Ethan kind of joined a group of cannabis kind of formed by Dragonfly Earth Medicine, and they're another wonderful couple. Josh and Kelly are just incredibly powerful, beautiful spirits who have promoted and boosted and lifted the cannabis community throughout all the hell's ups and downs and everything else. And so his specific job was to start to explore some of these rare and unique minors in cannabinoids. And he's done some amazing work in discovering, like, oh, look what this does for this, or look what that does for that, to a point where he created a company that has reached out to a lot of cannabis breeders to start breeding these, not CRISPRing them, breeding them to be more expressive in that minor cannabinoid. Kind of similar to what Oregon Seeds did with CBG. Like, they spent a number of years breeding and breeding and breeding until they got a plant that really expressed a very high level of CBG, higher than anyone had ever seen before in hemp. And so, needless to say, in his work, he has done, an amazing job of identifying how many different medicines can come from this plant, whether it's cannabis or hemp. Because, and I think you hit on this by saying that, you want your plant to express as many different things as you can, because it works like an entourage. And he coined that phrase, the entourage effect. Because as soon as you start pulling shit apart, now they don't work as well. And this is the same in my work. I'm a soil biologist. So I want as much diversity as I possibly can have, because not only will something that is not supposed to be there become food, or it'll just cyst up and stay in the spore bank in the soil, or more importantly, dear friend of mine has been doing a lot of work in biosymbiosis. And biosymbiosis is where two bacteria come together, and one of the bacteria let the other bacteria enter into its cell. And this is the crazy part, right? Once it's into the cell, it's trapped between the outer and inner wall of that other bacteria. Eventually, over time, the inner shell, the inner wall, which protects the organism itself, allows that bacteria to enter in as an oregano, so an organ, another functioning part of the cell, but not in control. But then when that cell divides, now you have a whole new species, because that oregano turns into a nucleus, so it's a completely different species than the one or either could have been. And the same is true with horizontal gene transfer. So you're on the right track, dude, by trying to get as much diversity into your medicine as you possibly can. So I applaud you again for doing this without really understanding how valuable your work is, by doing that, by letting it express itself.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. That's awesome. Like that. Yeah. I figured kind of that it sounds like almost just like an evolutionary kind of thing with that whole biosymbiosis and how that works. So that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that I'm on the right track. I had to go off this whole thing that I call like a farmer's almanac a lot of times too, and start researching and then seeing if any sort of information kind of matches up with what I'm doing. But sometimes I just gotta like learn to myself, because I'm a stubborn person sometimes. I'm like, well, I gotta learn even if it fails myself, so then I could actually teach it that way to me. So I'm glad to hear I'm on the right track. Thank you for that.
You're spot on, my friend. You're spot on. And let's face it, failures are nothing more than a lesson. They're not something that we should look at negatively. We should applaud each other. It's hard for most people to applaud you when you're successful, but we should applaud you when you make a mistake too, because now you've learned a valuable lesson. Humans don't learn from their wins; they only learn from their mistakes, which is crazy, right? It's fucking crazy, but
yeah, that's right.
That's the truth of it all.
Yeah.
So do you have animals as well?
Yeah, I do, and they're my major composters. I consider I have goats and I have chickens and stuff, and yeah, they earn their keep. I know a lot of people. I don't know how many people are gonna like freak out if I say this, but like that my last name's Igwe. It's Nigerian, so we do use like their goats for food and stuff, and so like they're like meat goats and stuff. So they're big and they make plenty of compost and everything. And then our chickens, they earn their keep with their eggs. As long as they're not getting attacked by coyotes, then maybe I'll start, using them as a meat source. But it's just hard to keep them alive for like more than a year or two, like with the stuff. So, but with the coyotes and stuff. But yeah, they make some great, fantastic compost. I love using different types of compost and mixing that up and be able to throw in the soil any sort of way I possibly can. That's the biggest thing, is trying to build our own soil out here, because we're working straight out in just rocks, which it's very hard on a lot of farming equipment. So learning different techniques, such as no-till, makes a big change in our game, because the least amount that we could do with tilling would be great, because if we start tilling out in that field, we're going to be messing up our farm equipment like crazy. And so it's better to where if we could just layer a nice lasagna of good compost and then plant the plants into that, and just start building a soil on top of this rocks, which provides good drainage and also could provide phosphorus if it's possibly broken down right, then that's the idea. Being able to create some sort of the right soil for this environment to be able to help these plants thrive correctly in this hot, dry, arid, environment.
So let's talk about the weather for a minute. What is your highs like in the summer?
Yeah, so our highs are that sometimes averages for weeks straight, it would be like close to 120, if not 120, and that's pretty hot and dry, humid, and we are the driest state in the U.S. is out here in the Mojave, Southern Nevada, or Nevada in general. We don't get much water. California pretty much takes up all the water, and then by the time that moisture is moving in here, there's little to none. So we also have a monsoon season that comes over from Arizona, and we're lucky if we even get a few drops a year. We just got done not too long ago with like a straight 235-day period without any moisture or rain or anything, and it's been pretty tough. Yeah, so we have to rely on like well water, and so we have to make sure that we're also doing a lot of water conservation when we're doing so. In order to even grow this plant, you have to have what's called water rights and everything too. So they regulate it like crazy. And with water conservation and everything, but like just the system they have is a little. They're trying to do it for the best, but someone could have water rights and then not use the water, but they will lose those because they're not using the water. So it encourages people who have these water rights, like say if like they're from a farming family and they get a they get these water rights are now like worth a lot, like almost like 6,000 to 7,000, if not even more, per acre of water to use. And if they like inherit those, then they have to start like just leaking water out just to show that they're using those, even if they're not growing anything. They have to just waste this water on the surface just to be able to say that they're using the water in some sort of way. So it's kind of like backwards in the sense of like, is it really water conservation if you encourage these people to use the water that way? But they also don't want people to be camping on these water rights if they're not using them, So it's a whole crazy political kind of thing that I don't really want to get too much into, but it's just a touch. But I like the idea of being able to use minimal water as possible, so I'm not just sucking up a lot of water from like the ground or anything, but which is like the water I use is nothing. I'm on a small 5-acre farm out here. I'm only doing about like the acre to a half acre of hemp, and then I have like a 30 by 100 high tunnel rice system that I'm growing like the produce and all that stuff that can't really handle the heat and stuff. So I'm not using a whole lot of water, but it's just on a bigger basis where people have like hundreds of these waters, acreage of waters and stuff like that. It's a different thing, and if you're not paying attention to be able to conserve that water, it could be a big negative to your environment.
This was something that I ran into out here as well. Is the farmers were dumping water into the drainage ditches, and so I started poking around to figure out, well, why would you do that? We've been in, we were in a 20-year drought out here until 2 years ago when it started raining, and bottom line was the same thing: use it or lose it. And so I was invited to do a talk at a water management board meeting here in Oxnard, and the thing I suggested to them is like, you set up this law to fail. You're creating a situation where the farmers have to waste the water to protect them from you coming in and stopping them or taking it away from them. I go, why aren't you approaching it from, if you don't use it, you can sell that water right to someone else who doesn't have water rights, right? Mm-hmm. So they can then harvest from some other well or some other place, but they now have the ability to pull the water and use it for growing. And the law is insane the way it's set up. So maybe you can go to your water board and say, hey, look, instead of forcing farmers to dump it or use it or lose it, why don't you approach it from this way that actually generates income for both the farmer and potentially tax revenue for the friggin' board that's governing this?
Yeah.
So
that I love exactly what you said there. And I actually did that years before I had my own water rights. I actually was I bought the right to use water, which it was unheard of. And I kind of like discovered this just by researching and getting on the phone with one of the people in the water rights district. And he told me that you could, there is a potential to where you could rent water rights from someone who's not using them and be able to set it up. But the process of being able to do that is the same as selling it, which is just a pain in the butt. You have to get the water rights deed. You have to show you got to get the contracts written out. It's this, and you have to get the well survey done as well. So you have to pay for that. And you have to do all this stuff as if you're buying the water rights from that individual just to be able to use that water rights for 1 year. So you go through all this work, by the time it clears, you're pretty much going to have to resubmit again just to be able to do it. But that was the first way that I did when I first started to grow back in 2018. I had to rent from a local farmer some extra water rights that he had and stuff. And but there's also all these people that, they would like to do that because they're just wasting water that way too. But if they can make the system a little bit more easier for someone who's renting and not make it to where it's a prop, a system as if you're buying it, then I think that's the biggest thing. It's just the making it easier, to be able to make it to where you can rent this stuff, because it was a pain in the butt. And that was the first time anyone has ever really done anything like that, was when I decided to do that, because that's just the type of drive that I have, because I was like, I really want to be able to grow this year. So what can I do to make it happen and stuff? So, but yeah, it's the same process of buying it to rent them. And so that was just a pain.
Well, maybe you can, in your spare time, which I know you've got tons of, go back and approach these people level-headedly with common sense and say, look, what you're doing is wrong. And they probably know it. They should be encouraging this, not discouraging it. And there's no need to fucking survey the well every year. That's BS. Yeah. It's the same idea as, the fact that you're taxed on your paycheck, you're taxed on what you spend, and you're taxed on what you owe. That's just insanity, right? So anyway, not to again give you more to do, but the more people that come forward and start requesting these things, the likelier it is that we'll be able to make change in the future for other people. And let's face it, I mean, we should be having everybody growing, a small plot. And whether they're growing for food for themselves or food for animals or just rehabbing the soil, really, really amazing fact that in 1918, there are pictures of cowboys riding through Arizona, and all you can see is from here up. That's how high the grass was. The reason that soil was so rich back then, because they made the mistake of mowing down the grass and tilling it and growing crops, right? That caused the Dust Bowl. Mm-hmm. The reason that soil was so fertile was that tall grass would pull condensation out of the air, and it created a system where the soil stayed cool enough that it would condensate. Because your soil doesn't condensate. I doubt your plants get any condensation.
Correct.
Yep. Yep. And that's the reason why is we changed the weather patterns by doing this. And so if you want to bring the weather patterns back, you've got to shade the soil. Do not let it be exposed to the sun. As you've learned, yeah, that soil's a nightmare to farm in, but it wouldn't be if you had friggin' tall grass all around you. Your soil would have been made. It might not be deep, kind of like the rainforest. It may only be a couple inches, 3 inches deep, but that's all you need to grow, a healthy plant. So again, at the end of the day, it's like the more you approach it as an ecosystem, the faster you will get to the goal of having a sustainable ecosystem where all of a sudden you do have condensation. I mean, there's some really cool work, dude, on what they've done over in the deserts, these communities, these tribes that have been living there for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yes.
And they start by creating a giant bowl. So they dig out all of the sand and they create these banks and these hills. And then what they do is they start planting on the sides of those hills. And eventually what happens is the indigenous plants, obviously, they create this bowl. And inside that bowl, they've got moisture every day. Every day, those plants are soaked with water and they collect the water, right? They put little plastic sheeting or collection units around the plant itself that drains into a bottle. Now they're making their own drinking water as a result of this. And then as the plants creep up the sides and they get to the top, now they've created a windbreak. So when they do get that howling wind, it goes right over the top of the dome. How hard is that, right? I mean, yeah, for you're rocks, so you can't really dig a bowl, but at some point you can start rolling rocks off to the sides and create these micro berms, which will eventually, over time, start to support those indigenous plants that will slowly but surely creep back in if you let them. And there's also some, like, we have the same problem out here, right? As soon as you go over the mountains, there's no humidity. Like when I was down in New Mexico, dude, I was horrified. Single digits humidity, like you just breathing and you're losing moisture. Like I was dehydrated all the time. So how do you prevent that, or how do you work with that? And these are some of the suggestions or some of the things that I've chased in my drive to know more and more about soil ecology, soil engineering, and understanding the properties of all these different materials and how to get them to work for me in all of these different diverse situations where I'm forced to work. So like you, I'm very passionate about what I do and refuse to just take things as they're said or take it for granted. I want to know why. If you say I can't do it, I'm going to try.
Same way, my friend. Same way. Yeah, it's crazy what you're touching about, like how you were saying that the native tribes actually kind of like knew how to do all this stuff before. And there was a time when Pahrump was a very it was a water spot that was just in the middle of this desert. It had a bunch of springs. We had over 72 local springs that were here. But right when westernization started to happen, the first thing that came in was that modern way of agriculture. The first thing they started to grow when they found out there was water out here in the desert was cotton, which was just completely unsustainable. And it literally sucked all the water out that we had locally in those reservoirs to the point the way they couldn't refill and regenerate and replenish, to where they're just throwing water everywhere. And then all of a sudden one day they realize how much they really are messing up the environment. And then everything switched over from growing cotton to now alfalfa just overnight. I mean, they had even a cotton gin, like right where the casino is now and stuff. And that just got shut down, and they switched over to doing, alfalfa and stuff instead of doing it that way. And they still were just doing improper agriculture. And it's just been just years of doing improper agriculture since like the 50s that has really sucked this place down really dry. And I talked to some of the old schoolers around here, and they remember going out here in the 70s. And then right when you go over that mountain from coming from Vegas and stuff, you saw people growing all sorts of great stuff, corn and just, all these different, everyone had their own little garden and everything was like looking really nice, but it was also just not sustainable the way that they were doing it. They weren't taking into consideration of ways to be able to, trap natural water, like you were saying, with the holes and everything like that too. Like nothing was really sustainable in the way that the practices were. And it wasn't just until like, around like I guess the even late 80s to early 90s or so that the NRCS started actually like, okay, maybe we should start pushing farmers to start doing this type of stuff. And so, trying to change a farmer's way, it's going to be pretty hard, like once you got a system going, you got it in your head already, it's already making your money that way. How am I going to get out there and try to take another risk that I don't want to do when I'm already hemorrhaging money, So it's crazy.
So some of the other really cool tricks that I learned about for people that are in a water challenged area is, I'm sure you've seen the terracotta pots, the red ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they dig them into the ground, and then they fill those with water, and that water leaches out slowly, so you don't lose any of it. It doesn't drain away, and actually the roots start growing toward that pot, and that's building that ecology around that pot. And then you pull that pot out at the end of the season, you move it over to another spot, you put some of your compost in where that pot was. Now you just regenerated the soil, and you just move the pot every year. And they could be little clay pots, or they could be, big clay vessels. It just depends on how aggressive you want to get with it. But that was one of the ways they conserved water, because let's face it, if you don't have a well and you're carrying in water, if you don't do something like that, all you're going to do is spend all your day carrying water in to water your plants. Right. Especially in a rocky or sandy soil. Mm-hmm. So another little trick for you. I love the fact you're talking about lasagnaing the soil by putting down that compost and then planting in that. And then next year you put down another layer and you plant in that. You're dude, everything you're doing is friggin' amazing out there. Seriously.
Yeah. It's trial and error, my friend. Trial and error.
It's inspirational, my friend. Let's face it, it's really inspirational. And again, you're driving on common sense, which, for whoever's listening, hopefully the right ears find this podcast, because that makes it your lesson, your journey helps them to not have to go through the struggles that you did to get that knowledge.
That's right. Yeah. And
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and even just the comparison of the type of grows that we did. We did that the first year that I started to grow, the first idea I had was actually what you're talking about with making holes and stuff. What I would do is I took this auger and I would drill holes into the soil, and that made it to where most of the water that I was feeding would actually go right into those holes where the plants would be going. So we just drill the holes, put a little compost down, and then plant the plant into that, and then move on to the next hole. It was pretty laborsome drilling the holes out, but once the holes are made, you could just keep planting inside those holes, and they'll actually retain water, like you were saying, in that little bowl. So then you'll be able to use less. And ever since we started to do stuff that way with drilling the holes, it's just been a lifesaver as far as water goes now. So, and besides making the lasagna, we're also making those holes into the ground and making sure they have kind of like a natural cup of good soil there that's mixed about anywhere from 10 to 20% of the natural soil. So even when you throw the compost down there, mix it up with the natural dirt, so the plant will get used to that natural soil taste, I guess you could say. And so it'll still be able to branch out into that other soil that's used that way, but it'll have that home structure of good soil, and also where water is going to be able to be retained easy too. So ever since we did the stuff like that, it's been pretty dang good on our grow. So,
dude, I can't tell you how impressed I am. I really can't. Because by mixing that indigenous soil into the compost, you're providing sand, silt, and clay that the microbes need to mine the material to strengthen themselves and to strengthen their community and build more aggregates and make healthier soil so that it can expand horizontally into the soil. Eventually, what will happen is all those holes will join. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how quick it works once you get that ecology, that soil biology up to speed. It happens incredibly quickly. So again, wonderful friggin' work, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome to hear like the science behind it, off of this when you just have like this intuition of how to do these things and you're just trying it out. And like, well, I feel this is the right thing, after just a little bit of meditation on it and stuff and just listening around what the environment really needs in order to be able to get your result too, and finding some way to, coexist with it and make it happen and stuff. And that's how I kind of get my visions in that way. And yeah, that's so awesome to hear the science behind this stuff, man. It's a trip. I'm like, wow, I'm actually on the right case and on the right course here.
You're doing fantastic. Way better than you realize, my friend.
Yeah,
Way better.
awesome. Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And another trick for that environment is there was a gentleman. Where was he? From Africa. Anyway, if you search water harvesting, you'll probably find this guy. He had a plot of land. Nothing was growing there, just scrubs, and he wanted to have a farm. And so he scouted the property and he found this in one corner of the property, this rock that was wet. There was no bubbling water, but it was wet. And he's like, So he dug a swale at the downward toe of that rock that was wet, and planted it. And eventually what happened was those plants found that little source that was leaking water and created a nice little pocket of healthy soil. So he goes, well, if that works, and he talks about smiles. So everything is a smile, and the smile is faced toward where you're trying to capture the water. And then he built another set right at the open mouth. So you have the smile, and then you build another smile at the edge of the other smiles, so that anything that leaks over that smile goes into the other smiles. And before he knew it, within a few years, he had soil and he had plants growing from that one little drip on the rock. So it shows you how powerful nature is when you give her an opportunity to start regenerating, which is what you're talking about, is regeneration. And he created a whole, book, or I think it was a book to start. And the word got out, and they interviewed him, and he did a couple of documentaries about this work. And the interesting thing is that, like, especially if you do occasionally get a monsoon, oh my God, you're going to just sink all of that water into that soil, and that soil is going to regenerate the seed bank of all the indigenous plants that would be there if they didn't get fucked up by both weather and human activity.
Yes. Yeah. I love exactly what you're saying there, that seed bank and stuff of everything too. I've seen some stuff I've never seen in the valley pop up. It was like a few years ago when I was growing out there, and yeah, we like the flowers, like when we actually got a good gust of rain. It was just like, I think about 2 years ago, maybe now 2 years, but we're right outside of Death Valley, about maybe a half hour from it. And they got this crazy rain that happened out there, and where, cars were getting thrown off the side of the road. Water was just water and dirt was covering up the roads. People were stranded there for a good minute. And but afterwards, there was like this beautiful bloom of like these gorgeous flowers. And a lot of those flowers were popping up in my area too, but not to like my neighbors in area. So they like to be able to release these seed banks just by growing in these conditions that are regenerating the soil, be able to see the natural life come to that's already been. It's amazing. And I really want to start documenting all the different types of flowers that are starting to start popping up, because I know I'm going to start getting a lot of these native plants that haven't been seen for years popping up around here. So I'm excited for that.
Do you have the app on your phone where you can take a picture of the plant and it'll identify it for you?
I just use like Google Lens and try that way, but it's a hit or miss type of thing.
So there's this badass app. I think they charge some money now, where they didn't used to. Let me see if I can find it here. Sorry for the delay. Oh, picture this. So go on your computer or on your phone and go to the App Store and download Picture This. The most amazing tool. Not only tells you the plant, it tells you the uses. Is it poisonous? Is it medicinal? what it likes, what its environment likes. And now you can start to, like, I just moved into this new apartment and I haven't done shit in the backyard. It's just sand, and I'm getting all these really cool little flowers popping up because I didn't do anything, right? Because I'm letting it follow. And one of them is a medicinal little yellow flower. And this flower is so fucking cool, dude, because it closes up and droops down at night. And the next day it opens up and tracks the sun all day long. I mean, talk about a cool fucking little plant. So I actually put a little cage around the little flush of them, so the dogs wouldn't get in there and wreck them. And now I've got some little purple ones coming up. So again, without that app, I wouldn't know that this was actually a medicinal plant that was probably used by the indigenous, back in the day before we came in and messed everything up. Highly recommend you get that. And there was something else that I wanted to hit on that you said. Oh, about the monsoons, right? So yeah, if you start setting up those things and you do capture when it happens, because it's gonna. Right now we're in the strangest weather patterns ever across America. So it's gonna happen. So if you're set that up, dude, you're gonna jumpstart like years by having that there with the compost in there to catch it. And that compost, you can moisten it once in a while. That's going to increase the indigenous seed bank to start popping up as well. You don't know what you're going to come up with. You can make something into an oasis in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's what my goal is right there, is to be able to make it into oasis. I'm doing like in the field right now, I'm focusing on just doing like the rows where I'm layering up the compost and just focusing on taking care of the rows of where I'm going to be planting the plants, and then leaving a break and then doing another row that way, just so I have natural soil undisturbed. That's going to be just there. And I think that's where I'm going to start getting a lot of the natural plants that are going to start popping up, is in that middle spot. So it'll help me with being able to maneuver around the plants and take care of them, do some sort of foliar sprays as I want, and make sure they're doing all good. But also just having that little spot there in the middle would just kind of keep like before and after picture, and being able to also see just undisturbed ground and how it's going to just bring itself and correct itself back to life, which is the moisture from those rows, even branching off towards them. It's going to help a lot that way. So theoretically, No,
it will. I guarantee it. I guarantee what you're doing. The rows of plants are going to support water or moisture holding capacity. It's going to leach into the row that you didn't plant and stimulate the seed bank, and they're going to start popping up.
Awesome.
I guarantee it.
Yeah.
What's funny too is that 2 years ago, right after that monsoon happened, I was giving a 1-day lecture on the horizontal soil system at a farm, a cannabis farm that grows regeneratively, and it's in a little town that's known for its prostitution houses. You probably know the name.
That's what our town is, actually. No, unfortunately.
It may be the same town then that I went to. It was an hour out of Vegas.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah, that's why I actually call my farm Water Rock, is because Pahrump means water rock in like the local Indian tribe and stuff here. So
interesting.
It's probably that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's us.
Yeah. So when I drove through Death Valley, there was a fucking lake.
Yeah,
there was a lake, dude. There was a friggin' lake, and I was on the phone with my friend, many years old friend, and all of a sudden I come around a corner and I look and I'm like, oh my God, dude, there's a lake. And we were talking about the tough times, because this was like just coming out of COVID, and the economies were in shambles. All the small businesses had boarded up the doors, and it was a severely depressing time. Me personally, I just lost my love to cancer, and I was not in a great headspace. And so I was like, dude, I don't know if I should take this as a good omen or a bad omen. We laughed. Oh my God, we laughed so fucking hard, because there's a lake in Death Valley. No, that can't happen.
It pops up every time, like whenever it gets like those rare occasions that happen. And so the last rain that we had, again, I think it was like a year or two ago, but yeah, it's filled up that lake and stuff, and it's just started to dry out just by like last year and stuff. So yeah, it's a trip when you see it, man. It really is. But it's all salty and I can't even drink from it.
Yeah, well, eventually it probably would start to sustain life, and the microbes would consume or what do we call it? Break down the salts and push them back down into the soil.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to happen on my stuff, because I started to realize the salinity in my soil and stuff is pretty decently high, and also in the water. And so, building a salt resistant plant, or at least being able to make the type of salts that are in there being able to be used for the plants is like the most important thing too. And that's purely really done by compost, because we don't have the option of flushing that out, because the salinity is also existent within the water here too. So compost is everything with us.
So there's a company called Fish Brew. Write that down. That's going to be a real valuable one for you.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, ironic. Oh no, this isn't the shirt. It's another shirt that's tie-dyed.
Love it.
They have a product that's a blend of 3 different farms, fish farms, aquaculture systems, that has salt-tolerant and salt-loving microbes.
Okay.
If you apply those to sodic soil, you will bind them up. You'll bind up those salts, or move them out of the way, and really help with managing, preventing salt buildup, because salt buildup is the worst thing that you can have happen. Now everything's struggling. So if you're mitigating, migrating, and managing that salt from building up, you're ahead of the game. So the product's name is Trifecta. So just think of like winning the horse race, the trifecta.
Trifecta, okay.
And when you call, if you have any issues and they're not answering the phone or they're not getting back to you, just let me know. I have friends all the way up at the facility, so I can definitely make sure that your order gets filled and you get some.
Okay.
That would be a huge advantage in your situation.
Cool. Good. Yeah, that's what I needed to know about. Like, yeah, salt tolerant microbes and things like that. They're going to be able to help to make the even the salts there, because I mean there's a lot of like what salts are like really made out of too, depending on what kinds they are, because a lot of different types of things are salts, like even like calcium, magnesium, sodium, sulfate, chloride, all good things for a plant, but also just at a high dosage it causes that like osmotic stress, I think it's called, to where the plants can't uptake water like they need to be doing. So yeah, any sort of things that can make it to where the plants could use those type of salts the right way, so then maybe it'll help to divert it down, or any sort of way like to get rid of the salts, or just to make the plants use the salts correctly, so then they could actually thrive in the conditions that are a little bit higher, and the saline would be good. Yep.
It will absolutely help you, especially as you're transitioning in. Like the natives, we don't have to worry about. They're going to be fine. And even any part of the seed bank that pops, they'll be fine.
Right.
But like your tomatoes and your hemp and other vegetables and plants that you're growing, that trifecta will help them transition into that soil, and hopefully you're seeding some of them and rebooting the plant to get used to that environment. One of the coolest stories I ever heard was from a cannabis cultivator, and he traveled a lot, so he would move and stay at places for a couple years and move on, and then sometimes drift back. But what he always did wherever he lived was he found a secluded place, and he created what he called his cannabis patch. He would water it in the beginning, but he let everything go to seed. It wouldn't collect any of it, and then years later come back and collect some of the seeds, and knew that now those seeds were ready to go in that area. And then he would sell those seeds to the locals, and he did this all over the country. Brilliant, seed training. It's freaking brilliant, And he said he goes, his best results were 7 years, for whatever reason. 7th generation. I think there's stuff about this in the Bible, that the sin of a parent's is going to be for 7 generations. Yeah. So that again, there's a lot of these things that we hear that would don't really make sense, or we don't know where they came from. But a lot of it came from ancient knowledge of different systems, and whether they leaked into religion as a result of what they experienced in nature, or whether they literally did happen within 7 generations of family. And there's a lot to the fact that is one generation makes a lot of money, the next generation manages the money, the third generation blows the money, right? They didn't have to hustle.
Yeah.
So there's this balance between wealth accumulation or any kind of property accumulation that you have to be really careful about it, because like even me, like when I was growing up, I wanted my children to have at least the life I had, if not a better life.
Yes.
And I did get to a point though that I realized, oh fuck, I'm setting them up for failure because I'm making it too easy for them, and they can literally ask for anything, and it's like, no problem, we can buy that. And it got to the point where I said, whoa, I got to slow down. And it was like, you just see the picture on the beginning of this podcast of me sitting like something like this with shades on. That's where I was the happiest in my life. I was financially viable. I didn't have to worry about anything. I had a beautiful vacation home on Cape Cod with private deeded beach rights, beautiful big home in Millis where the kids were being brought up. And that was the very moment, that I was started to go, fuck, like I'm going to fuck these guys up, because my oldest daughter wanted a brand new sailfish or sunfish. I had kept and stashed the sunfish from when I was a boy that I used to sail with for her, because she loved it. And so finally, when she was old enough to, and I trusted her, she'd been through sailing camp, that I knew she'd be okay if I let her sail in the bay in Cape Cod, or it was called the Hyannis Bay or something, Lewis Bay, that she'd be okay. And I went up to my cousin's house, and dug it out of the barn, dusted it off, dragged it home, and gave it to her. But that was like, aha, I didn't buy her a brand new one. And yeah, she was a little embarrassed that the other kids had these newer models and newer boats, and their sails weren't kind of like moldy and shit. But at the end of the day, she loved it. Oh my God, for 2 summers, that's all she did was every minute she could get on that boat, she would be on that boat sailing.
Awesome.
And yeah. And my wife was like, oh, we need to get a golf cart or a 4Runner so that we can run back and forth to the beach. And I'm like, no, fuck that. Let's walk. It's better for us.
Yeah.
We don't. And I was just like, no, I don't want to buy a bunch of toys. It's not, it doesn't sit well with me that we're, throwing money around instead of like, putting it aside for college or, something way more responsible. So again, that was like a real big aha moment for me, that when I finally made it and had, completely comfortable wealth and income, that I don't make the same mistake. And hopefully, you and the other members of the audience who hear this are reminded of that fact, that if you spoil your children, man, you're going to have huge problems when they get older. They need to need things, right? And there's a big difference between wanting and needing. Mm-hmm. Needing means you need it. Wanting is different. Wanting means you want to buy it, you want to accumulate it. That's where you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
So, didn't mean to go on a rant there.
Yeah. It's good. Hit us with some wisdom, man. I love it, man. Because I have kids and I know exactly what it's like and stuff. And the spoiling that happens is just unbelievable amounts. Like, well, even if with my kids, it's if I stop buying something to make sure that they're not getting spoiled, the problem is that like I have the other side, that would start buying them stuff. And I also have, my grandfather who would just start buying them stuff. And so it's like, no matter what I do, they're going to get spoiled. So it's just like at one point of like, where do I like cross the line at to where like, okay, just give in, because all of a sudden then I just look like the bad guy here where I'm just like, oh, dad's just being a jerk and won't buy me stuff. So I'm going to go ask grandpa for it. Or I'm going to go ask mom for it. And then I'm like, oh, well, okay. So now I'm just the one that's being stubborn here, and it's just like, but there's not much you could do about that, when that does happen. But
it's about boundaries,
Yeah.
and it's about managing expectations. So
That's right.
if they do, get kind of spoiled, as long as you're like talking to them about it, saying, look, money doesn't grow on trees, and
Yes.
and you're so blessed to have a mother or a grandparent that can afford to give you that.
Yeah.
But you need to learn this one lesson, and
Mhm.
that is that nobody respects a gift, but everybody respects something that they worked for and earned with their own money and was able to buy.
That's
And,
right.
and that's a really powerful lesson you can teach your kids, because you can point out to them, oh, where's your little Game Boy? Oh, I don't know. Oh, you're not
That's my
respecting
first.
that little Game Boy. And
Yeah.
when I find that little Game Boy, it's going to go disappear because you're not respecting it. You're not respecting the possessions you get. So you could turn this around. You could turn it on a dime and actually turn it into a very valuable lesson. And in doing so, you're no longer the bad guy, and you're also making a case for both your grandparents and your wife to be like, ooh, that makes a lot of sense. I buy them this toy, and in a week they're not playing with that toy anymore. Now we're just accumulating, and
Yep.
and sooner or later we're gonna have to throw it away. So we're adding to the landfill. So this is not a positive thing
Yeah.
in there. And so
Yeah.
now you're the fucking hero.
Yeah, I'm working on it just like that. Everything you're saying, man. That's the truth. That's a fact, man. With the little Game Boy, we just replaced that, I guess, now with not the Wii. I always say that, but like Switch.
Xbox.
The Switch now. It's a Switch, so instead of a Game Boy. But yeah, that's exactly it. And then they don't even want to play with it when we buy them stuff, because we gotta buy them stuff for Christmas, and all of a sudden they have accumulation of all this stuff, and then I see my son outside grabbing a stick and just swinging that around, and having a good time with that. I'm like, what are you playing with a stick for when you have all those toys in your room? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, dude, you don't know the value of these things that you have. He has like 5 RC cars because his grandpa keeps buying him a new one every single year, for his birthday, and then also for Christmas. And it's just like, what? But thank God, dude, these kids are doing really good. They're not just like, well, I'm just going to go get it from my grandpa. If I tell them no on something, they have it somewhere inside of them to where they still value the things that they have to earn. Like if they don't earn it, then they're not valuing it as much. So if I tell them like, look, guys, if you do this, then you could get this for your birthday, or you do this, then you're going to be able to get this for your, for Christmas, such as like grades, make sure your grades are good, and then have that to where they start working for it. Then that's when things start getting a lot better, but yeah, because if you just keep giving them, they're not going to really play with it, because they didn't have to go through the wanting, the suffering to be able to get that, which like builds the character that they need to have. So, and maybe plants are the same way, like you got to kind of make them kind of just like with seed training and stuff. You got to kind of make them want to be able to survive in these conditions and actually be able to, thrive that way. If you just give them everything they need all at once, maybe they could become a little spoiled, but if you kind of just lean off of the stuff a bit and then teach them.
Another lesson. Yeah, another lesson that I taught my kids was that, if you don't play with it for a year, why don't you sell it?
Yeah.
Or you can sell it, and then now you got some money that you can open a bank account with. And if you do that to enough stuff that you're no longer using, all of a sudden you're going to end up with $100 in your bank account. You can go buy a new bike. Well, not nowadays, but back when they were growing up. And that helped a lot. That helped them really start to respect the things that they had more, and appreciate the things that they really liked, where they were not wasting time or energy on focusing on things that they don't even play with anymore. That those were now moving out of the situation. How do I say this? The environment. The environment was less cluttered, and all of a sudden they had money in their bank account. And nowadays it's so easy with like Marketplace or Facebook Marketplace. What's that other site? There's a couple of different sites. Neighborhood. You probably have Neighborhood out there, where they can become little entrepreneurs. And before you know it, maybe they'll be like, hey, Dad, can I plant some plants? Because I want to sell them on Facebook, right? And, sell little cactuses or whatever.
Yeah.
So, really building confidence, character, the things that we've lost as a species. That we don't build confidence and character in our children anymore. And I blame a lot of it on this, like, screen time. I mean, you should have seen when we went through when DMs came out on computers. So all of a sudden, the kids at school could DM somebody else on the school's network. And a lot of the parents started complaining about kids bullying other kids through this DM. And I'm like, what is DM? And it's like this new communication that had just sprung up as a result of networks and computers that kids were being trained on. And then came the flip phones and texting. That was a whole nother nightmare. And then came the fucking social media shit. Oh, fuck. And I feel bad for parents like you that are dealing with that whole pressure from their kids' friends to, well, why can't I join Facebook? Why can't I be on Instagram? And it's been proven hard fact that it really decimates people's character and self-confidence because they look at somebody that's different than them, maybe prettier or has more shit, whatever it is, and they're jealous, and then they beat themselves up. And so it's something that horrifies me, and I've preached to my kids that, like, if you have children, don't let them just connect free, because the reason my children are the way they are is because we were very strict. I mean, they were like literally the last kids to get phones in school, and at that point it was like, come on, guys. Every single kid in the school has it. And, my wife was very active at the school and participated in parent, what is it called? Parent school board or whatever that stuff is, the parent PTO, parent teacher organization. And monitored this, watched this firsthand go from one wealthy kid who had a flip phone to pretty much now everybody in every class, above and below them, all had flip phones. And that's when it was like, whoa, all right, this, obviously we're not going to stop this. We're going to slow it down and prevent their attention from getting grabbed by this stuff too quickly and too much. And she limited the time that they had the ability.
Okay, guys, let's pull it back to the soil matters here. As much as I'm loving the conversation and the meanings behind it, there's a water report and a soil report that Adam wanted to go over with you, Leighton. So
all right, let's whip them up.
Okay, I'm gonna pull those.
And thanks, Ken. You know how we get on this podcast. We just drift off.
It's keeping us focused here.
That's his job. That's why I love him. All right, irrigation report.
Yeah, so we do the water report at first, I guess. But like I was saying, like the salinity as far as our water goes, it's pretty high. Like as far as electroconductivity goes, that's literally what's coming out raw out of the well. I bypassed my my filtering system because I just wanted to see what's coming out of my well. And you have a lot of like salts, and even the person puts in like the interpretations that it's just a lot, pretty high, and it could cause like, some restrict drainage and stuff. And the high salt tolerance plants are the only ones that could survive in that condition. So again, kind of what we were talking about, got to definitely kind of look probably into that trifecta with fish brew, maybe to help out with that. And also I think just excessive composting is probably going to be the best thing to do to probably crack that.
Absolutely. What'll happen is you'll bind them to your extra cation exchange sites. So basically think of a clay platelet as it looks like a little flying saucer. On the top and the bottom are positively charged, and around the outside edge there's 100 parking spots that are negatively charged, so that attracts the anions or the cations, so the calcium, magnesium, potassium, but also salt is attached. So that's another good way to manage excess salt from building up and causing problems, is to create more cation exchange sites. The way you do that is you decompact the soil, which is basically what you're doing right now. And then as it decompacts more and more and more, especially those rows in between, you are gonna tie up more of the salts. So that's pretty significant, dude. 771.
Yeah, water just coming out. That's what it's at. So yeah, and that's just I have a filtering system, but it has like, you know, I run it through a series of like carbon filters and all that too, but I haven't tested that. But this is just like what it comes out in our well. So, and actually this is probably good water compared to a lot of the other water when you go closer to the town and stuff. And at least the pH is good too. You know, it's at like a 7, I think, or something. I think that's on the other page, but yeah.
Well, for right here, I mean, this is very mineral rich water. You've got a lot of calcium, magnesium, boron's good. You got some sulfate. I'm not overly excited about the chloride because you have so much sodium, but it's, you know, again, good mineral rich water. And, you know, another thing too is that we have been told that salts are bad for us, right? We have so much salt naturally in our body. It's important. It prevents us from getting dehydrated. It does all these good things. So drinking that water unfiltered, I would highly recommend. Maybe filtering it for the plants, that's fine. So let's look at this. This detection limit.
Yeah, it looks like we got 7.6 of the pH too. That's not bad compared to the rest of the valley, I guess. The rest of the valley usually coming out around like a 9 or 10 and all that. So I was like, well, at least we got a good.
All your metals look really good. You know, your CalMag is good. Molybdenum, you need molybdenum for your plants. That's something that's really, really important. And a lot of people miss it. Scroll back up a little bit there. There we go. Potassium is low. Okay, back down again. Thanks. I just want to check something. Manganese, 0. So that's another one that you probably ought to look at in your soil is your manganese. So manganese, molybdenum, lead's 0. That's great. Sulfur's fine. Silica's nice, dude. That's great. Strontium. Is there any mines near you?
Yeah, most likely. We have a zeolite mine, but then there's also this other mine. I have no idea where it is, but I could hear like the bombs going off and stuff when they're mining and stuff, and it's just like loud as hell. All of a sudden, they're just like a boom, and we're like, whoa, what was that? But yeah, it's somewhere I think like a little more like southeast or something like that. But I don't know what mine it is or what they're doing. No.
Well, you know, and another thing that you could do too is if there's a zeolite mine near you, is get some, because zeolite's a wonderful water conditioner. I'm glad you knew about that.
Yeah, gotta take advantage of your local resources and stuff. And it's 15 minutes away from my house. So one of the first things I started to do when I was farming, when I found out about zeolites, is I went over there and got myself a ton of it and put it in the back of my my truck. And wow, I didn't realize how much like that, like one of those like large bags would actually weigh, and it dropped my truck all the way down. Like the shocks flattened out. And I was like, oh God, I got to get going before my tire pops, man. Like, you know, sorry to drive back, but it was 15 minutes, but I made it and somehow managed to get that off the truck. It kind of bent a bit of the hitch and stuff on it, but I got it off, and luckily it was a work truck. I wasn't too worried about it, but I got it off, and I've been using that. I still got some around here and everything too. I keep throwing into little patches of like soil when I make those holes. I'll be mixing in there with like, you know, the biochar and the other composts and things like that, you know, the hemp char and hemp kashi, all that stuff that I like to do and all that. So yeah, definitely zeolites are like a big thing that we use around here since it's local. So.
And another thing too that is really helpful is just a little bit of gypsum, because the gypsum softens up the compaction. Not I wouldn't use it on the natives, but like in your holes. Okay. That'll help those roots penetrate horizontally.
Cool.
Was there another test there we go.
Yeah, the actual soil report that we had was it didn't go into the details as far as all the like the micro metals and minerals and stuff like that one does for the water, but it kind of covers like the basics here. With the pH, salinity, phosphorus, and all that stuff. But you can see even like some of the stuff that we were deficient in the water, we have a lot of, like, especially even with the phosphorus itself, and it has manganese in there, like a little bit decent amount, I guess, at 2.01 and stuff. But again, the salinity though and the sulfur is a little high too in that.
I wonder where all the nitrogen is coming from. Is that soil that you have worked with, or is that just raw native?
No, this is soil that I've actually worked with.
Okay.
I didn't take a test. Like the last test I did was all the way back in like 2018, but it wasn't in the greenhouse. So before I started to do my regenerative system that I have going, I didn't test before, and that was one of the things I was kind of like regretting right now, because I wanted to see how what it did to the soil and stuff, like as far as beneficial stuff goes. But I have one all the way back in 2018. I didn't send that to Ken though, but yeah, it pretty much just showed like the salinity still being decently high, but not nearly as high as it is there. But the phosphorus was like all the way down to like, I think like 15 or something like that, and that went all the way up to like 166, which that was for the outside of the field, so not really in the greenhouse. So I don't know if it was already that high before, because where I decided to start growing inside the greenhouse also just already had compost from the last people that owned the place. They had like horses and I think cows in that area, and there was like this whole area that was just like covered with a bunch of compost. And then I'm like, that's where I'm going to grow at. That's where I wanted to get this high tonal rice system built up around, so I could start growing in that manure and stuff. And just did that one till and got that stuff mixed up and started growing that. And I got as deep as I could in there, which is only about like maybe 6 inches. So it's still pretty on the surface as far as the testing goes. But that's what the numbers came back with this year when I just got it tested. So
what are you growing in the greenhouse where you had the high phosphorus?
Yeah, so I'm growing the tomatoes and I'm growing the peppers. I'm growing like greens, growing well, the onions are in pots. They're in their own soil mix and stuff, and the garlic and all that stuff. All the bulbous stuff are like growing in pots because we have too much rocks to where they're not going to be able to develop really that well. But yeah, mostly like the biggest things is tomatoes and peppers that are growing in there.
So they should begin to chew up that phosphorus then for you.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to. Yeah.
Yep. And another trick too is jackhammer radishes, daikon. You ever heard of that?
Yes, I use them in my cover crop mix. Actually, I got a good amount of them growing right there. Yeah, our cover crop mix is pretty dominant with those. Yeah, the daikon radishes and stuff. Yeah, and have like that and the common veg mixed in there. Some peas, some hemp, all that stuff too in there. So it's a good mix, really good mix. It gets good biomass and stuff. And then after they grow, I just flatten them right down using like a cultipacker, since we don't have a crimp roller, and then we put a tarp over the top of that after maybe throwing some compost over top of it, and then terminate it that way with the tarp, and then just plant directly into that tarp with our plants and stuff. So that's our new system that we're kind of developing, and that way it kind of retains the moisture too from the plants, and it actually started to bring back some of the native worms in our area, which we just don't have. Those native worms that was down way below that were just waiting for that moisture to get right. And then they start surfacing up, and I found a whole bunch of the little worm castings and stuff all around this year. And I was like super excited. It was our first time using the system. And I was like, oh man, this is a winner. This is what we're definitely going to have to start doing and stuff. So yeah, very happy about that. So
yeah, we call that necromass. So
okay.
We have seed banks, and then we have necromass. And necromass is, microarthropods, worms, protozoa, nematodes, and they're pretty much all there laying and waiting for the right environment to start coming out and getting to work for you. So if you're getting earthworms, dude, you're doing the right friggin' thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. I think of necromancy when I think of that, like you have to like summon them. So like, give them the right conditions. It's almost like doing the spell there, and then you're summoning these worms up from the deep the soil and having them come to the surface, But it's like a more positive than what actual necromancy is. But
yeah, you're doing a little rain dance, except
pretty much it.
Yeah, I did.
I also want to point out that Leighton, he does bokashi and oh my God, biochar using his hemp, etc.
Yes.
So you might want to just jump on that for a second or two.
Yeah, I saw you dumping a whole bunch of those biochar stalks, and dude, you got to make like a piano. You got to make a xylophone with those. Did you hear all the tones coming off of them?
Yes. That's how you know it's good right there. Yeah. Just sound like grass almost.
Yeah. String them up on a friggin', make friggin' wind chimes out of them.
Yes.
Can you imagine how cool that would be? I mean, especially with all the wind you get there.
Yeah, they probably start shattering all over the place, but that's fine. They'll just feed the soil, so it's good.
Yeah. No harm, no foul in doing that, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's just part of our steps also just kind of be able to close the loop a little bit too, where like everything that we're growing from the ground, like as far as our hemp and stuff, we're also just putting it right back in, One of our big, huge farm mottos is actually use hemp to grow hemp, and also the produce that we have and stuff. So yeah, we made our little kind of farm exclusive things of like hemp char, which is obviously, the biochar made from the hemp stock and stuff. Then we grind that up, activate it with some EM and stuff and put it right back into the soil. But we also have the hemp kashi that we make too, which is a pretty cool concept. It's we have like the biomass after we do our extractions left over and stuff. And so we decided to try to use that to be able to make our bokashi. And since we don't have an easy source of like, rice bran or anything like that, the thing that we did have a bunch of though was this hemp, like the hemp biomass flour and stuff. So decided to try to ferment it and see how well it could do, and it turned out to be doing really well. And it's just been holding some crazy amounts of microbes inside of it, and it's good stuff. And so we use that on making all of our bokashi teas now that we call them hemp kashi teas, and just putting that everywhere. We mulch around with that before we throw down an actual mulch of wood chips. We put that nice layer down on all of our plants and everything, and we even include some of that too when we throw them into the hole and stuff too, so that it gets some cannibalistic effects from the plants to be able to absorb the things that it already had from its last grow into the new grows, so it's just like feeding that carbon right back, and the nitrogen that's already in that biomass too gets fed up there, as well as all the microbes that are having to blast with all the microcannabinoids and terpenes that might be in there, and who knows what that does to them, or if the plants could absorb that right back in and it makes the numbers bigger. I don't know, but theoretically that's what I think in my mind, and hopefully then the science will start being able to prove out a little more towards that direction too. So
I can honestly tell you it does. If you feed a plant itself, you're basically giving it an easy to digest. Think of it as like baby food, breast. You're giving it everything that it needs, easily digestible, because it's already been broken down to some degree because you've bokashi it, or you've fermented it. So it's very, very easy to use. It's very easy for the plant to absorb. And you're absolutely right, because think about how hard that plant worked to mine the sand silt clay, the rock, taking all that sunlight and converting it into sugars and leaking it out to grow the microbes that it wanted. That's a lot of work. So, it's called ATP. It's the energy currency for the plant. And if you're feeding the plant what it wants, so it does not have to go through all of that work, expending all of that ATP to grow itself, the yields are going to increase because it's not wasting energy mining material, because you just gave it to it, just gave it fresh mama's milk, right? Gave it everything it possibly needed to grow up to be a big kid.
Yeah. Awesome. That's it. I just feel so good hearing that science and stuff, because like, again, I'm just going off of like my farmer's almanac and stuff. And so when I hear someone that's actually in the industry that actually understands this stuff, confirming that what I'm doing is right is very comforting. And I really do appreciate that. It's very encouraging too.
So. I appreciate it in a different way, because when I first started doing conferences and speaking to the cannabis community, I got laughed at a lot when I started talking about feeding the plant itself, and they're like, no, if we chop and drop the leaves, we're going to have all kinds of problems with insects and fungus attacks. And I'm like, you're going to have the exact opposite reaction. You're now building the soil microbial communities that prevent those pathogens. The only reason those pathogens are there is because you're not dealing with the ecology, the overall picture. You're not making sure your plant is super strong so that it can resist these types of things. And the only way the plant gets strong is by feeding it good things, not McDonald's and NPK shit. And so, it took a while. It took a few years before people started to realize, like, oh, wow, this makes sense. And then shortly thereafter came out natural farming. Because I had migrated from Hawaii out to California, and came Jadam, and these guys, thousands of years of anti-technology, verified the things that I was puking. So it was kind of like all of a sudden instead of being hated on, people were like, hey, what else can you tell me?
Exactly. You be proven right, then that's when they get more curious and be like, okay, well, maybe you're onto something.
Yeah,
I feel like that's what's gonna happen with this whole thing with the hemp kashi and the hemp char and stuff. They're gonna be like, well, that was from your farmer's lab. Like, okay, well, tell me a little more, you know?
yeah. We shouldn't even talk about NPK without using C. It should be CNPK. And this is something that, just recently, Biomakers is offering a program called Bee Crop 2.0. And Biomakers is a genetic company. So you send them their soil sample and they send you back basically instructions on what's missing. So what organisms are not present that should be there to mine, say, magnesium or molybdenum or any of these other things, right? And they use CNPK because the carbon is the cornerstone. Carbon is truly the fertility of soil. If you have high carbon or high organic matter, that feeds all the biology so that the biology can then divide and divide and divide and divide and consume. Because the biggest problem with NPK is that, especially if you're using nitrogen in a nitrate form, you burn carbon. The microbes have to burn carbon to metabolize the nitrate into a plant usable form. And if you're using an ammonia based or ammoniacal form, you need more water, right? So especially like in these environments like New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, if you're using friggin' ammonia, which is usually one of the more popular versions, you're burning water like nobody's business. And if you're using the nitrate, you're degrading your soil at an incredibly fast rate. So again, by feeding the plant what the plant is or what the plant wants, and not playing around with a salt base, you're hitting it out of the park, dude. Every swing, you're hitting it out of the park.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully you can go back to the other people in your community that are trying to do the similar kind of homestead approach, and explain to them that this is why this works so well, because these are the circumstances in the scientific approach of what I'm doing. It's not whimsical. It's actually thousands of years old technology that we've lost, or anti-technology that we lost as a result of the program that we went through in the starting in the teens, 20s, all the way through now. We're getting bombarded with messages that are just flat out lies. So I hope you feel the confidence to speak comfortably about what you're doing and why it's working, and how everybody should be approaching it the same way, so that we lift each other. We all lift the whole little local economy together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
right.
Man. Thank you. I do have to feel the confidence, man. So
Instagram, Kingdom Aquaponics LLC. Hit me up, dude. Like if you have a question or you're talking to someone and you're a little bit not quite sure how to say it, just ping me and I'll shoot you back the wording that you need or answer the question that you have, so that you do have the confidence. Because again, I'm here to teach people how to fish. I'll sell you product. I got no problem with that, but I don't want you to buy product from me more than twice. After that, you should be making your own.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's just, it's my approach. Again, I'm doing it from the heart, and it's not about money. It's the more you give, the more you get, and I can swear by that. In my life and in my experiences. Yeah,
that's big time for me too. It's not about the money, dude. It's about being richer in the finer things, that go beyond the dollar bill means and stuff. And I wouldn't become a farmer if I was trying to go after money. Right. I'm going after the love and the time that I get to spend with my family, and being able to, show them and teach them how to survive, basically, and those are the biggest things that matter the most to me, building up that soil and everything. Just doing the best change that you can do, I realize, is literally in your own backyard. That's where you start, is make that change happen in your own backyard, your own community that's only grown right there. And then it could grow from there, but it's about making sure that you're taking care of your, local stuff that you can, your own backyard and your community and stuff and your family, things that are closer to you. That's where change starts. Starts.
Oh, man. Yellow skunk. Come on, brother. Come on, brother. One of these days you got to come on here. What you did is amazing.
He's on next month, actually. So
fantastic.
We're going to have some fantastic fun with him.
Oh, yeah. So, Ken, you want to do questions now? Because we're past that 1.5 hour mark.
Well, we've got 3, but the one question I want to get out right away, Adam, is the hemp kashi and that is not on your website. Where can people, because I know you're producing that for sale, where can people go to buy that?
It's going to be on the website. I'm just I'm perfected. I have to get the packaging, labeling all correct and everything like that too. And then that should be on my website within like the week or so. So that's where it's going to be on. So just keep checking back, please do, guys. Like, keep looking at the website and checking back. But I should have it by the end of this week. So that's my goal for this week. So that's my homework to be able to do. I've just been stuck doing a lot of farming stuff. So it's just been a while before I started to get the the labeling made the way I want it to and all that, and getting all printed off. So yeah, I do apologize. It's not immediately available right now, but if you guys are rewatching this as a recording, hopefully it's there right now and you guys will be able to see it then. But as of right now, this minute, no, I don't have it on there, but I will. So just bear with me.
Okay. Cool. So the first question is, which landrace have THCV? Only Ethiopian and Thai, or some others? Do you have an answer to that?
Far as I go, I have no idea. It's like land races, as far as, I mean, most of the plants that we have out here that are like hemp or even cannabis, came from somewhere else. So I have not the answer for that. I know a lot of our stuff, came from like Middle East, like the biggest strains that we have that are like the best came from there. Then they had to get adapted to the environment around here and stuff. THCV, I don't even think I have like minimal if I do on mine.
You're less than 3%, so you're not going to have any.
Yeah. It's LOQ in my stuff, so yeah.
The way you should approach this Akusha is find Dr. Ethan Russo. He has working on these miners and getting them to come out, because again there's a lot of very powerful medicine in that plant that we've lost due to all the breeding that we've done. And worst case, or worse yet, a lot of our bred cannabis plants especially from the West Coast, are all over the world now. And it used to be the opposite. It used to be that all the seeds came from Amsterdam, where a lot of the early cultivators ran to, because they could cultivate over there. And so the land races have had opportunities to cross pollinate with some of these cultivars that we created, which are very, very limited on all of the miners. So he is, track him down. He's doing a lot of work on breeding out some of these miners, make sure that if you do get some seeds that you are growing biologically. If you grow synthetically, you will not get the expressions. It has to be grown in biological soil. And Ethan will tell you that personally, if you get a chance to speak to him. Like he may be too busy now to even communicate with people. But when I reached out to him 5 or 6 years ago, he welcomed Pauline and myself in to have coffee with him on Vashon Island, which was like, dude, this guy's a rock star. He's gonna just come on over, have some coffee. Really down to earth, easy speaking guy. So he may still be very active, or maybe he's bound up in his work. But I would start, if you're looking for that, I would start with him.
Cool. Okay, the next one is there a point you can take your soil where the plant can handle high heats normally?
Normally that it can't. I think that's what he was trying to say.
Yeah. Like normally the plant can't take the high heat. Is there a point we can get the soil where it can take the high heat?
I think he's done it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that lasagna layering is like the biggest thing. As long as you're keeping the roots and everything moist and cool, that's the biggest way to be able to keep the plants happy and healthy. Is working on within that rhizosphere. That's what you got it. That's where it all starts, really. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, like, think back on the Great Prairies before they got plowed up and turned into deserts.
Mm-hmm.
All that shading was key for creating condensation, because the humidity hasn't dropped tremendously. You know, the humidity is the humidity in Arizona and New Mexico and Nevada. I mean, potentially dropped a few points, but it's still similar to what it was 300, 500 years ago. The only difference was that the plants that grew there were able to harvest the humidity based on the fact that the cool ground that was protected from getting cooked by the sunlight had enough temperature variance that it could pull that little bit of humidity out of the air, which created condensation, which then dropped down and fed the plant the water. So it's all possible. You can harvest water in the middle of a desert. You do it the right way.
That's right. That's right.
So Peter Cactus wanted to remind people that Shango Los has videos from Dr. Ethan Russo on his channel. And I know Leighton has been on with Shango. You want to find out more about his horizontal soil system, you can go to Shango's channel, and Leighton did a wonderful video there on explaining how it all works together.
Yeah, Shaping Fire, guys. Shaping Fire is the name of the podcast. And he's had Ethan on a bunch of times. And again, his ability to pull out the best in you and really get a good explanation of what you're talking about, he's a master of. So it's great content, to say the least.
Fantastic. And then Cass had a question for irrigation. Do you irrigate in the mornings, evenings, or other?
Oh, that's a good point to bring up. Yeah, timing is everything out here in the desert. You don't want to have to irrigate during the high heat periods. So as we start moving more towards like the summertime, it's very crucial that we bust out the waterings early in the morning, or even like late when when the sun starts going down, and we're not getting that direct heat. So then we're not having it to where it's exposed and just causing evaporation and water loss that way. So yes, both times actually. I try to hit it in the morning, and then I'll go when it starts getting to afternoon, check on it and seeing if it's, drying up a little bit. Then I'll give it a little bit more too during that afternoon. So then that water lasts longer during the whole night time when it's going over. So it's better to do it in the afternoon once that sun goes down. But we get full, at least 14-hour days when during the summertime and stuff. So you got to get out there around probably 8:30. The sun doesn't really go down until then, 8:30, 9 o'clock or so. And then you got to bust out the watering. And depending on the pressure of our system, we have to do about a quarter acre each time. So this year we're going to do only about a half acre. So it's going to be a lot less strenuous on me. So I could be able to adjust my clocks correctly. But 8 o'clock PM, 8:30 or so. That's usually the goal time right there. So then you put that water on. It's nice and dark. And then it stays throughout the whole up into the morning and everything. That whole night, it really absorbs down to the roots and it gets in there. So all the water that you're using, it's not less from evaporation or anything too, except for if the ground is already hot or something, but no direct sunlight to be taken out. So yeah, it's a good point.
Nice. And it brings up another point is even in the summertime, what is the temperature like at night? Does it get really cool?
Not really.
Okay. So the thermal energy keeps the air hot.
Yeah. Yes, it does. In our summer peak heat, I mean, we're still in the mid 80s by the time before the sun even starts coming out, around 4 a.m. or something like that. The lowest it will get is around maybe 82 if you're lucky, but then it's just spiking right back up and stuff. So yeah, so still 80s are pretty still warm, and that's all just from thermal, just the heat around, from the rocks and everything like that, just been sticking around the thermal radiation. So
thermal mass.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have any more questions from our chat, but Adam, do you have any questions for Leighton for what you're doing that he can help you with?
No, I think the confidence that he's given me as far as what I've been doing has been great. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. And thank you so much for like helping to go over the systems of soil. Actually, one question I do have: what's your consideration as far as adding in different type of like microbes and like the use of like different type of like set like maybe like even what do you think about the use of trichoderma and things like that compared to like fungus and stuff? I know a lot of people said they don't like it, but
that's trichoderma is a great one because I like what it does, but I only like what it does after you've got mycorrhizae colonization. So there's a gentleman named Myco Roots in Oregon. I would suggest that you take your hemp plant right after you harvest it. You got to do this immediately. Pull up root samples and send it to him to see if you've got a decent colonization. If you don't, he can or I can direct you to a product called BioRadis. They have the most proven beneficial strains of mycorrhizae that every time I've used that product in the years, and I send back the roots to him to verify, because here's the thing, like I often have him take one of the bottles, I send it to him and I have him pull sample from it because the spore rates are all over the map. Now, this company is the only company that has always been greater than what they claim on the label every single time, and sometimes significantly better. And that gives me the ability to say, okay, I only need a quarter teaspoon per plant or an eighth of a teaspoon per plant. And that lets the product go further. And once I've colonized the plant, I'll often send back the roots the first year and say, okay, how did I do? You say, you hit 20%. Okay, I got to dose it again because I want to get up to 40%. Anything above, I think it's 50 or 56, doesn't matter anymore. You're not getting any more benefit. In some cases, you can actually be parasitic because it's pulling more nutrients than it's giving back and sharing those nutrients with other plants. Which again, it depends on your goals, right? If you're going for an ecosystem, you want that share. But if you're trying to manage biomass, then you don't want that plant to be sharing all of the things that it has with others. That'll happen naturally, indigenous with the local plants that they'll share back and forth. But again, you don't want to get to a point where you're parasitic. Now, where trichoderma come in is that as long as the mycorrhizae has colonized, then they're fine. They're a good, they're a good soldier for you to have in combating fungal problems. Yeah. So, but if you let them colonize first, there's only so many colonizing sites, is what I'm trying to say. So if the trikes come in first, they're going to beat the mycorrhizae to those sites and take them all up. And now you can't get the level of colonization that you really need from the mycorrhizae. And, this has always driven me nuts because the vast majority of mycorrhizae products claim on their label that they got high levels of trichoderma. And trichoderma is a contaminant. It comes naturally out of the air. And so they've provided the perfect environment to grow their mycorrhizae spores. So, of course, the trichoderma took off because they're not, first of all, they're not growing it in vivo where they're using plants to grow out the mycorrhizae spores and the mycorrhizae sites. So there's a thing called propagules. And anytime you buy a mycorrhizae product, they're going to talk about propagules. So what is a propagule? Propagule is a root fragment that actually has the infection site, proven viable by science over and over again. If you have that propagule and it's in good shape, it will colonize. And the second is spores. And spores are really important because if they're healthy spores, then they're viable. If they're shriveled up, they're not viable. Lastly is hyphae. Right? Hyphae is the little strand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But science has never, ever been able to document that a hyphae will colonize a plant.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been documented. And it probably never will because it's too difficult to verify. And it's by far the least likely to survive once it's being, tossed into this hostile environment. So if they claim, X amount of propagules, you got to question them. Okay, what are you claiming as a propagule? And if they're like, oh, we have spores and we have hyphae, don't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're claiming spore and propagule and not hyphae, buy it, because there's a lot of these companies are cheating. I mean, some of the best known companies in America, and I shouldn't name them because I could get sued, but they're on every grow shop. I tested, probably 25 times their products, and I don't think I got one hit. I'm saying I didn't get one sample back that had what they claimed was in the package. And some of the samples that I got back had nothing, zero. It was just clay, and they're charging $50 for these little bags. So you can get fucked in a heartbeat.
Okay, that's good to look out for in that type of stuff. All right.
And another thing to keep in mind, and this is really important, if you are using, especially like cannabis or hemp, you're terminating that plant in the time that the mycorrhizae takes to colonize. So you can't apply it. You have to apply it at seed to get some kind of benefit from the fungi. And especially if you don't have plants over winter and that mycorrhizae has no place to overwinter, then you're starting from zero again next spring, because now that plant's going to leak out, it's called chemophorum sensing, and the mycorrhizae spore is going to go, oh, I know the plant's over there, and it's going to germinate and go up and attach, but it's still going to be 90 days from the time that propagule infects that friggin' plant and gets all the way out to a place where it can start to mine nutrients or trade nutrients with other plants. So you're really getting a very short window of benefit unless you overwinter the plants or overwinter some kind of plant that can colonize, that will be colonized. Then you're going to get instant, like you plant that plant and the plants are going to just send that mycorrhizae right over if it isn't already where you're planting it. Because chances are it'll be where you're planting it if you have plants that overwinter.
Okay.
So you might want to keep that in mind, is that, even if it's like a cover crop that you leave. Yeah. And did you get snow at all? You get any kind of frost?
It's rare. We didn't this year. We do get frost though. It does get below 32 degrees out here, and that's why it just like makes it to our grow season does reset. Like we'll have some really nice plants, and then we get one night of frost, and like everything in your garden's dead. And then like you've got like summer days again after that, and it's like, what the hell, So yeah. But like what you were saying, actually, the minute like what you were talking about, how you have to establish this mycorrhizal fungi early, makes it to where the first thing to be able to do is like, well, since hemp doesn't last that long, what we got to do is make sure we're establishing on the cover crop seeds. We get that growing there, and since I'm going to be planting directly into the cover crop, terminating the top, putting that tarp down, stuff, the compost and everything, that mycorrhizal fungi is going to still be there while that plant is like slowly suffering before it dies. And hopefully by then we're planting the starters in there, and then it's going to transfer over to the live roots of like, the hemp or whatever cash crop I got growing in there. And hopefully it'll transfer over correctly that way. So yeah, using
it definitely will. I've proven it a number of times. And again, even if you get a frost or a dieback, you didn't kill all the roots. You didn't kill all the fungi, right? There's still going to be life in the soil for a period of time thereafter. Eventually they will die because they don't have their solar panels anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to take time. They'll still be fighting and hanging on. And you never know. Some of them, the hardier ones, will actually send off a new shoot under the circumstance. You may have seen that.
Yes, I have. I've witnessed even like on the pepper plant and tomatoes and stuff. A lot of the tomatoes, like the new growth would just kind of pop up on the bottom, but it's pretty much just restarting, So like you're going to try to take care of that, and then all of a sudden you're going to get a frost, and then it's going to die there. But these things are just going to be constantly like suffering and where it's like, when do I just put you out? But it's actually good what you're saying. Don't, because it has like those already colonized, mycorrhizal fungi down inside that root system. It's good to keep that alive as much as possible before you start planting some new things inside there and then growing off on that. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It's one of the other things that I told cannabis growers way back when was, do not remove your root balls.
No.
You're an idiot. You're throwing away this incredibly valuable thing called the rhizosphere. That rhizosphere will stay intact for a few months, a couple months anyway, and colonize anything else around it. So just chop the friggin' bush down, leave the root ball in place, plant next to it. And then now that new plant will just tap right into that old plant, and you will have lost no organisms, and you'll jumpstart the new plant. Again, they laughed their asses off at me, but then when they started doing it, they're like, holy shit, this really works well. That new little plant, instead of having 10 days of friggin' plant shock or new plant growth, what do they call that? Transplant shock. I didn't have any transplant shock. The plant just, as soon as it got planted, started growing. And that tells you that what's going on is that old root ball's already connected with a new plant. So hopefully taught you a couple new tricks today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your coming on the show and being willing to express what you're going through, what you're doing, and hopefully inspiring others to do the same, because hey, growing in a desert can't be easy.
No, it's not. No. Yeah, and I definitely thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to come out here and start sharing and stuff, because it's that's my big thing that I'm really working on this year. Social media and all that stuff, and just kind of being able to like get out and like put or on like on the platforms of any sort has just been really hard on me. I just like to be out there in the dirt and just doing the plant stuff, and like it's really hard to be able to do it. But I'm focusing and realizing you can have the best thing out here in this desert, but if no one knows about it, then there's no inspiration and there's no sharing, and it's nothing, So it's really important for me to be able to start sharing as much as I can, and I start to feel that I'm really doing a disjustice to my community by not sharing my story, And so I appreciate you guys, for allowing me to be able to share this and stuff, and I really do. So.
Well, again, tell your community that you did this. Tell them this is taped. It's going to be up for hopefully ever until the world ends, whatever that looks like.
Until it happens, and everything gets shut down.
But I really, really appreciate your time, because I know 2 hours is a big commitment. But again, I unfortunately tend to drift off subject, but that also kind of makes it entertaining and fun. I'm sure Ken can testify to that. But
oh yeah.
All right. Well, good. I was going to say, do you have a laundry list or?
Actually, Shooting the Soil wanted to mention that what you were talking about with the propagation, they're actually seeing that under the epifluorescent, and he's got a new microscope, guys. So Matt from Shooting the Soil is going to be coming on. So hopefully he can show us something like that, where we weren't able to see it before, but we're now with a new technology, we're able to see it. But Matt's coming up next month. For next week for Leighton, we have Gerald Pollock, the fourth phase of water, coming on with us. Earlier that morning on with Conversations in Ken's Cafe, actually have Chris Trump coming on.
Nice.
We've got Stefan Burns coming up on Thursday, our geophysicist friend. So there's lots more coming out. I'm trying to do a daily show, guys. So check those out as they come out. Other than that, guys, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and understanding. And I hope to see your Bokashi stuff on your website in the next little while. So guys, I'm going to give you guys the last words.
Well, Ken, as always, much appreciated. Deep respect and love for you and Lil and all the hard work you guys do behind the scenes for the show. And Lil's always posting out the information that we're talking about so that the chat can get, gist on what we're doing. So, you know, she's great backup. And again, Adam, thank you so much for coming on and sharing it. Please, you know, promote this to your community so that they can see that you're not full of shit and that you really are on the right path and you're doing all the right things. Because again, man, I'm super impressed with your common sense or your intuition about how to do what you're doing. So well done.
Thank you. And again, yeah, I can't say thank you enough, Ken, for allowing me to be able to be on the show. And Leighton, thank you so much for sharing your information. And I can't wait till the next one. You know, like, thank you so much, guys, for these opportunities and stuff. So thank you.
All right, we're gonna drag you back on again in probably 6 to 8 months just to catch up and see how you're doing and what you're up to. Because we really appreciate pioneers like you, my friend, and that's pretty much what you are. Is you're a pioneer, struggling through life, trying to find a way to get things to work, and you're doing it, man. You're doing it.
Right on.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
again.
Peace. Adam, don't jump off. We'll talk a little bit more after, but chat. Thank you. We love you guys as well. Consider sharing this out, getting more people involved. The more, the better. But we'll talk to you tomorrow on Conversations in Ken's.